The diplomatic relationship between Nepal and the United Kingdom is one of the oldest Nepal holds, stretching back over 200 years to the signing of the 1816 Sugoli Treaty. What began as a strategic alliance has grown into a deep partnership. From the legendary service of the Gorkhas in the British Army to long-standing collaboration in education, development, climate action, and cultural exchange, the ties run deep and strong. The United Kingdom has been a steadfast supporter of Nepal's journey through peace building, federalism, and sustainable development. British aid has helped strengthen health systems, empower communities, and promote inclusive growth, while thousands of Nepali students, scholars, and professionals have found opportunities through UK education and exchange programs. Today, as we walk these quiet paths with His Majesty's Ambassador, we reflect on the enduring nature of diplomacy, not just in the formalities of state, but in the simple act of dialogue, understanding, and walking side by side. This is more than history. It's a living relationship, carried forward by people, shared values, and a vision for the future.
As Winston Churchill once said, "We make a life by what we give." And this sentiment echoes through the United Kingdom's enduring relationship with Nepal. On today's episode, we have one such individual, a diplomat who represents the bridge between our two nations. Please welcome His Excellency, Ambassador Rob Fenn.
Thank you very much.
Welcome to our show, Ambassador. Nepal and the United Kingdom have had a very long-standing and traditionally friendly diplomatic friendship, dating all the way back to 1816 with the Sugoli Treaty. Since the treaty, our relations have evolved and grown in the past 2 centuries. However, the impact of the historic treaty still weighs significantly on the minds of many Nepalese today. Nepal's border disputes, in particular with India, in areas such as Kalapani, for example, have been persistently a diplomatic challenge. Many argue that the 1923 diplomatic treaty with the United Kingdom had nullified all prior unequal terms. As the United Kingdom has deep historic ties with both India and Nepal, how does the UK view such tensions? And are there any lessons in particular from international law or British diplomatic experience that could help resolve such disputes?
Great to start in the deep end. So I don't compare myself to Winston Churchill, but I love your idea of a bridge. I mean, that is definitely how I think of my job. I think bridging to the past as well. I mean, we learn from the past.
Yes.
The UK's relationship with Nepal did start on the battlefield. You know, it was a bloody and difficult encounter. But such sort of respect and admiration was forged in those moments that it did kind of propel us into something bigger and wider and now much more modern. When I first came here nearly 2 years ago, in August, we were already celebrating something beautiful, the Treaty of Friendship, which goes back to 1923. And as I keep saying, I've never been in a country which has a treaty of friendship with the UK before. And that may be unique. And that does, I think, sort of capture the rather special spirit. Sure, there are problems rooted in the past still, and we discuss them as friends, which makes it a lot easier.
Yes.
I think I like to mine the past. I think it adds to the kind of substance of particularly our people to people links. I was talking to an extraordinary now British UK based Nepali engineer yesterday, and we got talking about our infrastructure legacy and how some of the roads in Nepal go way back. And my dream actually, which is to bring together now very elderly engineers in both our countries to celebrate their achievements all those years ago. I am told that the whole science of bioengineering, the choice of grass that might stabilize the embankment, this sort of thing, was pretty much co-invented by Nepali engineers and British engineers, 60, 70 years ago. So that's just one example. And I think, the whole Gorkha thing is obviously full of history. And we love that. But it has grown over the years, and it is a very modern thing now. So yeah, I see history as, we're not bogged down in history. I and my team look forward all the time. We're here to help Nepal kind of cope with the modern world, which is what all our countries are trying to do right now. Yeah, I don't dwell on history. I'm happy to learn lessons that history provides, but I spend all my time actually looking forwards.
Yes. Well, speaking of history, another big part, as you have mentioned, is the Gorkha regiment. There have been several reports of the Gorkha veterans of the British Army facing discrimination in pensions, medical, and other welfare benefits in the past. Back earlier in March, however, the UK began investing an extra 15 million euros to increase individual pensions to its Gorkha soldiers, between 10% to 34%, I believe. This increase will bring the average Gorkha pension to around 7,30,000 rupees per year. How effectively has this been put in place since then? And what would you say are the immediate impacts of this for the Gorkha?
You know a lot of facts, perhaps more than I do on this. I think the main things are that there is just one pension system now for soldiers across the British Army. If you're talking in lakhs, I think you're thinking about pensions spent in Nepal. The heart of the package includes the Gorkha Welfare Trust, which is an extraordinary organization, which not only delivers the pensions to the pensioners and their widows, and sometimes their children if they have children with disabilities, delivers those pensions to them wherever they are, I mean, really in remote areas, but also delivers medical care. And there are two really lovely old people's homes. I've been to one in Kaski. What a lovely place to grow old. I think that the pension system is working. It has clearly enriched Nepal in various ways. You can see a lot of sort of pockets of extra development which have happened where Gurkhas have retired. There are controversies around one particular cohort who retired before 1997. And the problem there is that they have chosen to spend in the UK a pension designed for Nepal. And it doesn't go as far. And, they face exactly the same kind of cost of living problems that other British people do. And there, that's what we have our welfare state for. Because there are many people way beyond Gorkha veterans who are struggling with the cost of living in the UK. And they have entitlements, free healthcare, support with all kinds of social services. And that's how we are going to try to fix this problem for this particular cohort of people. And I'm happy to say that there are very, very friendly but technical talks going on between the Nepal Embassy in London and the Ministry of Defence about how to take care of veterans. Because the British government, and I've heard it direct from senior figures like the Chief of Defence Staff, people like that, and certainly the current Minister for Veterans and Pensions in the UK, that they want every veteran to have a dignified retirement. That's our goal. Does that cover what you were asking?
Yes. Speaking of the Gorkha regiment, there are new ideas being put into the media right now, specifically how Britain is creating a new regiment of soldiers specializing in artillery firing. This is seen as a historic change to the role of the traditional British infantry. The elite force is said to be specifically including Gorkha soldiers that are already deployed in the British Army. What role will the Gorkha soldiers exactly play in this force? And what does it signal about the future of the UK-Nepal defense operation?
So, yes, you're talking about what they call a new cap badge. So a new specialization, new skills for the existing brigade of Gurkhas.
Yes.
They're not kind of bolting on a new bunch of people to the brigade. They've just decided to train the brigade of Gurkhas as it is in some of these additional skills. And I think one of the extraordinary things about the brigade down the decades, centuries almost, is that Gurkha soldiers are amongst the most adaptable in the British Army. You know, they just pick up new skills really quickly. They've already picked up English, and although they do operate in Gorkhali, a lot of them, and of course their officers all speak Gorkhali, so it's a kind of yes, it's a unique bubble in which they live and work, where they join the British Army, but the British Army promises them they do not abandon their Nepali culture, and obviously they have pandits and mandirs and an ability to live and worship and be Nepali. And to that extraordinary sort of culture in the brigade, we are just adding one more skill, one more sort of tactical skill, which is a kind of normal thing, really. The brigade modernizes itself all the time. So I wouldn't put too much kind of attention on what that means for future deployment. It just means we want the brigade, like other parts of the army, to have artillery skills.
There were talks of deployment of the Gorkha regiment in the Ukraine-Russian conflict. Are there any specific news with regards to the Gorkha deployment in Ukraine?
No, and I'm not talking about that. I mean, the whole of the British Army is deployable.
Yes.
But our involvement in Ukraine is basically sending equipment, lots of money, training Ukrainians in the UK. You can meet them all over Salisbury Plain. And obviously diplomatic attempts to end the war on terms which are just. That's what's going to happen, I really hope.
So the major emphasis is on diplomacy rather than warfare.
Well, it's both. I mean, Ukraine is fighting every day. So, but we're not sending British soldiers there at the moment, and I have no plans to do so. We want to help Ukraine defend itself.
Yes.
And help the country in the widest sense. You know, a lot of Ukrainian refugees came to the UK after the initial invasion. Some of them live with my brother. You know, so we know intimately what they endured. You know, it was an unspeakable invasion, and it's still going on, and we have to help them defend themselves.
Yes. Well, moving on from the topic of warfare and the Gorkha regiment, I would like to discuss a bit about education. Specifically, the issue with regards to brain drain that results from Nepalese students going to study abroad. According to the Apply Board report, over 85,000 students from Nepal were issued a UK study visa back in 2023, a massive 83% increase from the previous year. A major concern in Nepal is, of course, the brain drain. What are your opinions with regards to Nepali students choosing to study abroad in the UK versus staying here in our country?
Yeah, no, I have strong views on this, and I'm very happy to share them. So obviously, if Nepali kids who can afford it and are well kind of prepped to do so, choose to go to British universities, that's a big win for both. You know, I'm all for that, and I spend a lot of time kind of talking up British universities as a destination. So on the face of it, it's good news. But I think, you know, behind those numbers is a very worrying fact. That a lot of these kids are going because actually either they can't get the education that they want here in Nepal, and probably more to the point, they can't get the follow-on employment that they hope their education will deliver. And they think that by studying abroad, you know, they'll get both. I think it brings me to my main task, actually, which is to generate employment in Nepal. This is wider than the education piece.
Yes.
I think the lack of employment for young people in Nepal is the biggest, the crocodile nearest the canoe for all of us. So how do we fix that? I do think helping Nepal have a wider sort of menu of education products available here in the country at affordable prices is the main answer. I stress that the UK is keen to support Nepali education across the whole spectrum. We are actually investing heavily, time, money, expertise, partnership in the public education sector here. And next week, I think, the Education Secretary and Joint Secretary are representing Nepal at the kind of global festival of education in the UK, the Education World Forum, which is a meeting of ministers of education from all around the world. They have a number of really interesting appointments. My two favorites are that they will go to a session on soft skills, which is hosted by His Royal Highness the Duke of Edinburgh, who was here in Nepal not long ago.
Yes.
So I'm taking steps to make sure that Prince Edward knows he will have a senior Nepali in his audience. And the other thing is they're going to Oxford to the Saud Business School. And my son is studying at Oxford, so I hope I can bring them together in a social way. But yeah, so that's all public education, and the embassy and the British Council spend a lot of time working with our partners in the Ministry of Education on things like, teacher training, career development, curriculum development. Mother tongue education is a very interesting topic also.
Yes.
I have to say, I am so impressed by the way the Ministry of Education works with its development partners. I was privileged to be last week at the beginning of, I didn't do all 5 days, but a 5-day brainstorm about policies and funding between the development partners interested in education, the UK included, and the whole kind of public education machinery here in Nepal. An amazing example of what development partnership should be. So hats off to them. But families do often choose to spend their own money on getting education that little bit better. And that's where the private sector comes in. And in the UK, we have both, public education and private sector education. And there is some of that in Nepal. There's some very, centers of excellence, colleges, which either are doing their own, doing it all by themselves, or already doing it in collaboration with foreign education providers.
Yes.
And that I call transnational education. There's a very important report published about 10 days ago by the British Council on this, on the landscape, as they call it, for transnational education, or TNE. And to me, TNE is the closest thing we have to a kind of magic bullet for Nepal's problems. It is a perfect match of supply and demand. Clearly, Nepali families are demanding extra types of education for their kids. And the UK has got a remarkable supply of this TNE. And every time an education provider in Nepal sort of twins or teams up with one in the UK, remarkable things happen. It's not just that they can offer a different course at locally affordable prices. I mean, that's the key. But also you get sort of academic exchanges. Ideally, you build and build and build, and then you're doing joint research. And I'm very interested in connecting research in Nepal with particularly climate science globally. So TNE is a wonderful thing when it works, for both parties. It's incredibly flexible. And I think for many Nepali families, it would be a better option than taking that terrible loan or selling land,
Yes.
or getting the whole family to chip in. And then, the kid goes off to a foreign country, can be the UK, and they have this burden on their shoulders, and it's just not fair. I've been a student. I have boys who are students. It's an impressionable age, and people should not be turned into, the only hope of the whole family.
Yes.
It's tough. And I think, I was telling you a little while ago that with the previous Minister of Education, and I'm sure I can actually roll this forward and do it with the new Minister of Education. Yes. We were planning a kind of outreach to Nepali students in the UK, perhaps by inviting them to send us films about their experience.
That's
and of course,
interesting.
Young people nowadays just need a mobile phone and they can make a remarkable movie. And I just want that. I obviously want to be seen, but I also want effectively to help Nepalis who are losing their way if it's all getting too much for them. And I think this sense of sort of pastoral care and connection, which the British Embassy, the British Council, the Ministry of Education, and the Embassy of Nepal in London can together provide. I think that would be very useful and timely, actually, as we start to hear sort of, horror stories of young people despairing on foreign campuses.
Yes. Well, when you spoke of the TNE, actually recently the Nepali Ministry of Education, Science and Technology had started the process of modifying the rules on colleges affiliated to overseas higher educations by limiting transnational education. According to the article on the British Council's site, out of the 34 foreign universities and academic institutions that have provided for their affiliation to 59 Nepali institutions, only 8 were ranked from the top 1,000 global universities of the Times Higher Education Global Ranking. All 8 of these said universities are from the UK. That being said, would you say that the limitation was a smart move on the ministry's part? How will this shape the cultural and educational exchange between the UK and Nepal?
Yes, so this boils down to quality control, which I think is not only the right, it's the duty of the government of Nepal to do that. And it holds no fear for British universities. Quality control is actually useful for us because we would tend to win in any competition on quality. I think, it's always a bit tough when you introduce a new kind of new standard and the top 1,000 universities, it sounds a bit arbitrary, but they've got to draw the line somewhere. And I think as long as they are sympathetic to those that already have a relationship, which with a university which falls just below that line, I think we're talking about new affiliations, not old ones. So I would dispute whether whether colleges which already have a relationship should be made to change it, because I think the point about TNE is that it's entered into voluntarily by the two institutions as long as it works for them. But in the future, I can absolutely see it makes sense to have a standard. And I think the University Grants Commission is kind of tooling up right now to do more quality control. And on that, I say bring it on. I think quality control is good. Because it's all about reassuring the Nepali families that they're getting value for money out of these courses.
Yes.
That's it. So I don't think the policy is wrong. I think how it is applied is important. I think it needs to be, the regulation needs to be enforced briskly and quickly and without undue delay, because that just gets in the way of education.
For my next question, I would like to talk about the recent UK-Nepal Business Forum that was held back in February earlier this year. At this forum, Ambassador, you had stated, the facility from British international investment reflects the UK's commitment to sustainable economic development in Nepal. benefiting households and businesses throughout the region. Looking ahead, what are the UK's next priorities for strengthening the private sector engagement in Nepal, particularly in renewable energy or infrastructure?
Wow, how long have you got? This is my main focus, and it's on the whole a very encouraging scene. Yes, the Britain-Nepal Business Forum was part of that encouraging scene. On that stage, we announced, BII, British International Investment, announced one significant investment in Nepal. Since then, there have been others, and the most recent one, a $22 million UK part of, I think, a $66 million green bond, announced in Washington very recently. So the what I call development finance institutions, these are institutions which sort of recycle tax money, so British taxpayers' money and Swiss taxpayers' money and Danish taxpayers' money. There are a lot of DFIs active in Nepal. BII is the only one with an office here, so that makes it particularly expert in Nepal as an investment destination. So that bit of it is going very well, and I think is. I used the metaphor of mountaineering in my speech to the King's birthday party. And in that metaphor, I talked about fixing some ropes. The UK, Nepal, this is Nepal's decision to connect itself to global capital markets. And things like getting a sovereign credit rating, which we helped Nepal with last year, and this first international bond, are ropes that can help Nepal kind of scale this mountainside and connect itself, in my view, particularly with the City of London, because that's where the sort of trillions of pounds are under management. And Nepal, in my humble opinion, is an underinvested country. It is full of things which investors would wish to invest in, given half a chance. The trouble is right now, they're only given half a chance. They're not given a whole chance. There are a number of obstacles to successful private sector investment. And those are mostly around being able to repatriate your earnings. And right now, that's not happening for a number of reasons. But the government of Nepal is sort of methodically removing these obstacles. And that is very, very encouraging. Last sort of a year ago, April, we had the investment summit, and there a number of reforms were enacted. Since then, we've had an excellent report produced by Rameshwar Kanal and on other reforms that could be done by the government. And just on, Monday morning, I was in the Ministry of Finance with a really impressive session in which the Honourable Minister and the Finance Secretary and other senior figures interacted with all Nepal's development partners, the bilaterals and the multilaterals, on how to use this budget upcoming now. And inevitably they got lots of advice, but almost all the advice was, this is already in your plan, Minister, but this bit's especially important. My comments were all like that. But I did especially emphasize the urgency now of removing the obstacles to private investment in Nepal. And a major one is tax, the way foreign investors are taxed. Tax is a good thing. We want tax for the Nepal government. If the Nepal government has a big tax take, that's good for us too. But the kind of sort of retrospective tax which has been levied on invested or companies that have benefited from foreign investment is a big disincentive to future investment by others. So I want the tax regime to be more kind of transparent and predictable. But above all, we need people to be able to repatriate their profits. And I think part of the answer to that is for Nepal to have a really good suite of what in the technical term is double taxation avoidance agreements. It just means that an investor should know where they're going to be taxed and that they're not going to be taxed twice on any investment. Under any DTAA, which the UK concludes with Nepal, you can be sure that we won't be trying to bring all that tax to the UK. Actually, it's part of our, trade is the best form of aid. We want these investments in Nepal to flourish and to be followed by more investments. So, there's one real pioneer in this sector. That's the Dolma Impact Fund. And even Dolma, which is the most expert and, first mover in this field, is having difficulty getting the terms of the treaty on which it made these investments honoured by the Inland Revenue Directorate. So, until that happens, I think there will still be significant obstacles to bringing all these. You talked about a bridge at the beginning. I see this bridge extending to the City of London, and I want to bring British financiers across that bridge and show them Nepal and say, look, you can make money here. You can, and in the process, you can employ Nepalis, and you can bring that precious, technology transfer, and really modernize this economy. And perhaps the last thing I'll say on this, sorry, it's been a bit of a dump, but the role of the diaspora can be very important. And I've watched with admiration the way India's diaspora has kind of reached back into India and completely transformed that economy. And we need to get the same for Nepal. So on the 4th of July, I'll be in London with your excellent ambassador, Chandra Gamire, and we will dedicate a whole day to sort of outreach into British finance for Nepal, trying to talk up this place as a destination for investment, particular focus on tech, because there's a lot of exciting things happening here. And that audience will be, anyone interested in investing in Nepal, because of course London is an international financial center. But I will be particularly keen to sort of get to know and understand the decision-making processes of the Nepali diaspora in the UK, because they really should be first across the bridge.
Yes. Well, we've talked a lot about the UK and Nepal as two nations interacting with each other. However, now I would like to ask something about you, Ambassador. On media, we clearly see that you're very involved with Nepali culture, recently in Janakpur, for example.
It was a blast.
You also have a lot of videos on social media with you speaking in Nepali. How did this interest in Nepal originally start?
Well, so I am one of the few Britons who hadn't been to Nepal until he was posted here. But my father was a diplomat, and he had a posting in Delhi, and my father and mother came up to Nepal for that, famous holiday of a lifetime, which people tend to have in Nepal. And I remember they brought back T-shirts which said "Tiger Tops Nepal." It was a tiger, and as a small boy, I was just intoxicated by their stories from Nepal. So I've always had that kind of interest. Then I've worked with Gorkhas in different theatres. So the Gorkhas were part of the peacekeeping force in Cyprus when I was posted there. And then later on, I was High Commissioner in Brunei, which has a Gorkha garrison. And I came to admire the brigade as a thing. So that was also connected in my mind. But I think, honestly, I'm just an ordinary person who is exposed to the Nepali brand. Nepal is a very interesting place. And I just don't know of a country with quite such a positive brand. Most countries, we admire this and don't like that. There's a kind of mixed feeling. I've yet to meet anyone, if you say Nepal or, I live in Nepal, who won't go, wow, lucky you, So it is a positive, that positive brand, I think, is particularly intense in the UK. We have, for all the historical reasons you began with, we have a kind of sentimental attachment to Nepal, which is a steward of that relationship, I'm very excited about. And continually looking for ways to refresh. So, hence bringing the Duke and Duchess of Edinburgh here for their unbelievable visit. It was just wonderful from start to finish in February. Hence my trying to reach out to Nepalis on the campus of British universities. Yes. And with that, they're British friends and trying to get young British people talking and thinking about Nepal.
For my final question, I would like to ask if you have any messages you would like to give to the youth, the future of our country.
Now, that is a very big responsibility. Yes, I mean, to young Nepalis, I say, help build this country. It's a wonderful place. I'm not. I don't want any kind of guilt trip for people who leave. I think they do so for noble reasons, often to do with education and trying to make the best life they can. But I would say, even to people who leave, I would say, come back. Put your shoulder to the wheel. Mm-hmm. This place deserves a bright future. It is important in so many ways. I mean, it's particularly important to the UK because of our historical connection. It's important for the reasons we're celebrating this week at the Sagarmatha Sambad. Mm-hmm. Nepal is a custodian of the cryosphere, which is so threatened. It's the water tower of Asia. Mm-hmm. Nearly 2 billion people depend on water from the Himalaya, the Hindu Kush Himalaya. Mm-hmm. I think of the national parks. It's a biodiversity success mm-hmm. story. It has this unbelievable selection of different cultures, all side by side. Valley by valley. So not only the flora and the fauna, but the people are biodiverse to a tremendous degree. So it makes Nepal like a jewel, a sort of fractal thing. It's so complicated and within a relatively small expanse, mm-hmm. though it would be a lot bigger if you pressed it out on the map. It's a lot of actual surface area in Nepal, just some of it is steep. But in this relatively small surface area, to pack so much culture and creativity and diversity makes Nepal a very important thing for the world. And I think to see young people leaving this behind and trying to make a life in somewhere banal, I'm sorry, world outside, but I do want them to keep always at the back of their mind that this place is worth working for. Mm-hmm. And it's what gets me out of bed in the morning. And I particularly respect people who bring their skills obtained abroad sometimes, bring their skills back here and help the country cope with the modern world, because the modern world is becoming, increasingly hard to manage for any country.
Yes.
And a lot of my kind of preaching in Nepal is about connect with the modern world. I particularly want Nepal to connect with global capital markets. Mm-hmm. There's no doubt that the modern world can be baffling. There's a fear in Nepal, this sort of power gradient that if we get plugged in, we will lose our crown jewels. Foreigners will come and take all our stuff. And I do remember in the UK in the 80s, we had the same nervousness about getting connected. Mm. But I say two things to that. One is it worked for us actually. No one stole our our family silver. They came and invested and they brought technology and we retooled the British economy. Mm-hmm. But the other thing I say is that it can't be avoided. The modern world is coming, mm-hmm. and Nepalis are involved in it. All over the world, there are Nepalis leading in high-tech sectors yes. and in modern life. So those young people need to stay connected to this country and help smooth this transition. Mm-hmm. So that without losing its beauty and its diversity, Nepal is also self-sustaining. Its economic development accelerates. It gets the infrastructure it needs and the human capital it needs to be the happy and prosperous Nepal that we all want.
Well, now that we've come to the end of the episode, I would like to thank you with a small token of gratitude for your contribution on our show.
Well, thank you very much. Oh, well, look at that.
At the front, you'll find the words Ad Meliora written. It means towards a brighter future.
Oh, well, I couldn't put it better. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir.
Brighter future.